Contingency log number 90, codename, Friendship in Recovery. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying before, that villains are not born, they are made, which can happen due to a wide variety of reasons. For some, it could be due to one particularly traumatic experience. For others, it could happen due to a seemingly never-ending series of events. The result in the end, however, is the same. A moment in which a person's mind seems to snap, and they are consumed by the grief of what had happened to them. And from this moment, they are shaped by it, molded into something that may represent that which originally hurt them. This turning point of someone's life is what happened to the target of our contingency, a mare by the name of Starlight Glimmer, one whose story started years before her introduction into the show proper, when she was just a child. When a close friend of hers finally obtained his cutie mark, a symbol representing what a pony's personal talent is. He would be sent away to obtain higher level of education, but the drawback to this was that Starlight would lose her best friend. She would blame the mark itself for this, coming to the conclusion that the general advantages or disadvantages of having one caused too great of an inequality, and would dedicate much of her life into fixing this. She would eventually discover a magic spell which allows her to remove someone's cutie mark, effectively stripping them of their innate talents, and replacing it with a different symbol, one which represents the equality of which she sought after. She'd also managed to convince many others to willingly give theirs up, selling them the lie that their differences were harmful, and that only by being equal could everyone truly come together as one. Now, I would hope that it was obvious, but just in case, what Starlight Glimmer had actually created was a small cult, one which, thanks to the intervention of 6 other ponies, managed to see through the lie and rebel against her. Something she wouldn't take sitting down. Starlight would lay low for a time, waiting for the right opportunity to strike, deciding that the best way to get her revenge was to make sure her opposition never existed, learning a spell which would allow her to go back in time, and she would use this to ensure that Twilight and her friends never achieved their destiny. Unfortunately, this would have consequences of which she hadn't foreseen, as without them, the world would be left to chaos, if not outright destroyed. But with Twilight's intervention and her experience with dealing with friendship problems, she managed to show Starlight the errors of her ways, giving her a chance to fix her past mistakes. The world that Starlight lives in is rather interesting, as for the most part, it is a rather peaceful world save for the occasional threat to existence, and magic is typically used for everyday living. But Starlight in particular had taken time to learning magic which deal primarily in taking the offensive, something which allowed her to hold herself off against Twilight Sparkle, who is not only the princess of friendship, but was trained by Celestia herself, and she would only grow better at this when training under Twilight as her student. Starlight never seemed to show any regret in her new decision, but for a time she would still struggle with both an inferiority complex and difficulties controlling her anger, and if pushed too hard, she will lash out rather aggressively. Could she relapse if pushed too far, or if she were to suffer another event which could push her back into the wrong path? I can't say with absolute certainty, but there is always a chance. I must admit, I've gotten my fair share of magic-based contingencies lately, and with each I'm growing a deeper understanding on how to work around them. But of all the magic-based contingencies I've made, Starlight might prove to be my most straightforward. From my research, the spells which made her the most dangerous for her universe are twofold. Her ability to strip a pony of their special talent, effectively weakening them to a point where they'd pose no threat, and her knowledge of a spell to allowing her to go back in time. These alone would be enough to place her above anyone else. But I have no cutie mark to speak of, meaning that aspect of her magic will have no effect on me. And in exchange for a favor I know I'm going to regret, Booster Gold has given me a device which will keep me anchored to my current timeline, which will keep me safe from Starlight's time travel as well. This does still leave the factor of her other magical attacks, which I will admit can prove rather difficult, But as a unicorn, Starlight has one glaring weakness. Every unicorn's horn is the conduit of their magic, a focal point in which they can cast their spells. It is without a doubt the most important part of a unicorn, and it has been proven that the destruction of their horn can severely hinder, if not outright render a unicorn unable to use their magic. But worry not, as I have no intention of using this unless pushed to a point of absolute necessity. As while a unicorn is capable of living without the need of their horn, it could hardly be called a happy life without access to their main innate magic. That said, the horn is still my primary target, as I've managed to forge a magic inhibitor, which will clamp itself around her horn, locking it in place, and can only be unlocked by a biometric code. I'll need to be careful when using this, as should I miss, it'll only place her on complete guard and make it far more difficult to secure the inhibitor upon her. That said, there is a factor that I need to take into account, and that is that we have seen what happens should Starlight enter our world, effectively being rendered a human with no magic to speak of, and unless she gains access to other mystical items, she is about as powerful as any normal teenage girl is. Of course, there is also the chance of the opposite happening, in which I end up in her world, which would mean all would go as planned. There is also one little factor I cannot plan for, meaning I'd be left at the mercy of whatever should happen in the moment. You see, while anyone coming from Starlight's world is turned human when entering ours, it also works both ways, meaning should anyone enter their world, they will be transformed as well. So I have to wonder, what would I turn into? If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.